Thank you for coming for this breakfast to talk about the Gulf crisis. Wadah Khanfar, the former Director General from Al-Jazeera, currently President of the Common Action Forum, is going to give us some ideas. He's participating very deeply in the politics in this region, and not to say about the media. We will have for this debate Pedro Rojo, the president from Al Fanar Foundation. He is going to frame the topics, and this conversation is going to be open for you to participate. I would ask you to use your tag names. If you want to talk, just leave them like this, vertical on the table, and then I will give you the chance to talk. This is a dialogue, but anyway, I would ask you to be, let's say, very objective, short and sharp. Then we can use much better this time we have until 12 o'clock. Some guests might arrive during the conversation, but as I say, this is an official event, but it's quite informal. I hope you can enjoy this time, and thank you very much again. I will. We have just to say thank you very much, Mr. Javier Solana, Mr. Celso Mori, for joining us here. And yes, let's gonna start. Pedro, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to CAF for the possibility to talk about with Wadah and to raise questions about something that I feel in Spain has been very badly covered. Sorry for the media here, but I think it's quite important issue, the crisis we're living in the Gulf. And I would like to start, Mr. Wadah, trying to see how can we frame this crisis in the actual situation in the Arab region. Why now? Why after 2014 pull out of the ambassadors, the agreement with Saudi Arabia, I think looks fine. Why now again this crisis?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Actually, just to start with, I mean, you know that for the last few years we have been going through massive geopolitical transformation internationally. At the Middle East, much more visible because of many complications that we have seen after 2011, the Arab Spring, and the aftermath of it. But of course, internationally, we are also going through huge transformation. We have witnessed the decline of the American presence in the region through partial withdrawal, basically, during the time of Obama. But also we witnessed decline of European impact in the region because of the economic crisis and because of many other complications that Europe has gone through. And because of all of the above mentioned, the region itself has felt that it could do things on its own, in a way. So, and this is, in my opinion, has happened across the world, from Latin America to East, to Asia and Africa and so on. The center is weak. The center is weak. The Western center that has dominated the international scene for the last few decades right now is much weaker than before. This is to start with. Second, the most important geopolitical event happened in the Arab world was the 2011 Arab Spring. It was a huge shock for the long-established authoritarian system of the post-First World War and Second World War. We have never witnessed in the Arab world something like the Arab Spring. It was amazing the way that it was done. A wave of democratic revolutions across the Arab world conducted by young people in a peaceful manner, and at the same time, people who have not embraced a certain ideologically rigid ideas, but they have values that they share with the rest of the world. It was a brilliant moment. I have never seen something like that in the Arab world myself. I was covering this event from Al-Jazeera headquarters, and I can assure you that the Arabs at that moment in time were living their golden moment. It was beautiful, it was great, it was lovely, nothing wrong with it. Now, unfortunately, the Arab Spring happened in poor countries, mostly Egypt, Tunisia, Yemen, Libya, and Syria, and many others. The rich countries, on the other hand, here means Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, have not been actually very excited about this idea of the Arab Spring. And this is why we witnessed by the end of 2012, a new, 2011 of course, 2012, a sponsorship of counter-revolutions. These countries have become the location where the previous regime figures landed in. And they have started, of course, through media and through political intervention as well, creating a counter-revolutionary essence in the Arab world. That was formulated in a coup in Egypt, 2013, that brought General Sisi to government, in a transformation in Libya that brought General Haftar again as the leading figure supported by the Gulf states, that brought again in Tunisia huge pressure on the government to ask the Islamists to give up their participation in government, and that was happened when the Muslim party, which is called Al-Nahda, did withdraw actually from the government at that time, and of course created a lot of pressure in Yemen, where a new dynamics in Yemen emerged and a civil war started. So basically, unfortunately, from 2013 we witnessed a decline of the wave of Arab Spring and an increase of the counter-revolutionary attitude in the Arab world. That led to a lot of complications. One country was not in line with that thinking, which is Qatar, basically. Why Qatar was not in line with this thinking? Because Qatar have seen during the Arab Spring an opportunity of a new regional order that might be much peacefully established. And they have seen through Al-Jazeera, of course, that they are a major contributor of a space and environment in the Arab world that created the Arab Spring. Because Al-Jazeera was one of the most important elements of creating a mindset in the Arab world. I can't say Al Jazeera has been behind the Arab Spring. It's not true. We were shocked, like anyone else, of the Arab Spring when it arrived in 2011. We did not anticipate it. We did not orchestrate it. Nothing. But it happened that the ideals Al Jazeera stood for, from 1997 until 2011, led to a new mindset in the Arab world, and the youth felt much more empowered. And the concept of freedom of expression created a new space. So, right now, since then, of course, there was some kind of rivalry between Saudi Arabia and the Emirates on one side and Qatar on the other side. Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are supporting counter-revolutionary forces. They donated tens of billions of dollars to the Sisi regime in Egypt. They put billions of dollars supporting Haftar in Libya. And there was a new environment because they have the money and they can do that. Qatar did not really put that much money because they cannot really have that support to match Saudi Arabia and Emirates, but they took a negative stance. They did not become enthusiastic for the coup in Egypt. They were not also enthusiastic for the situation in Libya. And although they participated with the alliance in Yemen, but again, they felt that what is happening in Yemen, again, is not actually the right solution for the complications of Yemen. So Qatar was on the side of this whole matter. 2014, there was a huge crisis of withdrawing ambassadors, accusing Qatar of supporting people who are supposedly terrorists. And I would say the word terrorist here in the Arab world means anyone who the government think that he is not in line with their thinking. Simple. So Muslim Brotherhood, terrorists. Even political groups who do not have any ideologically, very visible ideological, but they are against the government because of any reason, they could be classified terrorists. So terrorism, we are used in the region to attribute that magnificent terminology against anyone who is opposition, basically. So the agreement in 2014 between Qatar and the two countries continued for about 8 months, actually, the crisis, but ended with an agreement whereby Qatar, in a way or another, become much or less enthusiastic in supporting these causes. They demanded the expel of 11 members of Muslim Brotherhood from Qatar, which Qatar did. And they demanded that Al Jazeera should become a friendly institution. And of course, that is something that Qatar could not do, because Al Jazeera has been for a long time have that kind of attitude of much more independent voice. Although I would say Al Jazeera as well in 2014 was much more soft in covering issues related to Saudi Arabia and Emirates. That's true, but not on the Arab Spring. They continue to support the concept of democracy in Egypt and the concept of democracy in Libya and so on. The current crisis has been actually in making from 2013, as I said. But it exploded in the way that exploded thanks to His Royal Highness Mr. Trump. Simple. Trump came to the region and he was received like Caesar in Saudi Arabia. 55 heads of states and representatives of Muslim states received him in a speech that he delivered for about 30 minutes, and everyone was hailing him. He has never seen such a thing in his life. He said so, by the way. He said he has never seen, which is crazy. I mean, imagine while in his country he's criticized for major things, in our countries he had been received by 55 states to deliver a speech. Nothing in that conference, but listening to Mr. Trump, heads of states from across the Islamic world. Thanks, of course, to the Saudis, who have given him a fantastic opportunity to be shining in front of the cameras. Second, he came back with $480 billion, which is amazing. 480, and I mean $480 billion, $500 billion promises of investment and weapons to be purchased by the Saudis from the Americans. So the man was really excited. And then one of the requests that were made is actually to give them the opportunity, of course, to, manage the region. And Mr. Trump, it seems to me, gave them the green light to do so. Managing the region means, for them, few days after Trump left the region, is putting Qatar under blockade. Not fighting Iran, not going to do a deal with Israel, nothing. Just putting Qatar under blockade. In a dramatic way, which we have never witnessed before. Planting fake news on Qatar News Agency, claiming that the Emir made a statement in front of the army saying that Iran is the closest ally and Hamas is the best in the world, and few other strange ideas. And the news were faked by the Emiratis and the Saudis and hacked. Now, of course, I can comfortably say so because it has been proven by a technical team where FBI participated in. So they put fake news in the Qatar News Agency at midnight, and then all the news agencies in the Arab, these countries started promoting these ideas that Qatar is waging war against us because Qatar is pro-Iran, Qatar is pro-Hamas, Qatar is pro-this, and therefore we have to wage war against them. Although Qatar denied that the fake news has ever happened, because the Emir that day didn't utter a word to the media, there was nothing like that at all. But anyway, it was a pretext to wage something we call a blockade right now, and to do whatever they have done, putting Qatar under land, air, and sea blockade, and preventing Qatari citizens from existing in any Gulf state country, and preventing their citizens from traveling to Qatar, and closing down websites, TV stations, and any news agency that is not in line with their way of doing things, and issuing a law of putting people in jail for 5 to 10 years if they tweet or use social media, even WhatsApp, to make any statement that could be seen as sympathetic to Qatar. We have never seen something like this in our life, including WhatsApp. By the way, I say WhatsApp, okay, Twitter is public, WhatsApp is private. But they say if you send a WhatsApp message to someone and that someone brought it to the government, you could be held accountable in front of law for saying something. And we have now more than 30 people in prison because of that law, law. So, I mean, we have seen something in the Gulf we have never seen before. I have never really personally seen such an environment before. Unfortunately, the current situation, as you may have noticed, has led to a stalemate at this stage, because they have undermined the status of the region. Yes, you can. Trump told them you can do whatever you want to do, and they were encouraged by doing so. But this region is not empty space. for you to do whatever you want to do. There are other hegemons in the region, like Iran and like Turkey, who will never allow the Saudis to reshape the region the way that they wish. They have also interest. And this is why right now we are in stalemate. And as you may have seen, tomorrow will be the last day, the deadline of the 13 demands that these countries have put on Qatar. And personally, I'm not optimistic that this issue will be resolved by tomorrow. But again, we are going to witness a lot of debate during the next few weeks and months maybe about this.
Thank you. You said, I think one of the main issues that's behind is managing the region. I think with the Arab Spring, before the Arab Spring, we have more of one pole fighting for the hegemony of the region. You have Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Maybe Qatar playing another role, but when the Arab Spring starts and you have Islamist, let's say Muslim Brotherhood, like in Tunis, Egypt, Turkey was very happy. Syria was looking to at the beginning of 2012 was like really a huge wave of moderate Islamist parties in power. That was the counter-revolutionary movement that Saudi Arabia started mainly. Now Egypt is under the umbrella of Saudi Arabia, so really they are the hegemonic power in the region. This is the trying, but they think they can finish now with Qatar and with the Muslim Brotherhood. As you say, I think it's a big mistake. It's like thinking that really they can do much more than they can, because Turkey, even if it's as long, also have low also the profile of supporting Muslim Brotherhood like parties, even in Syria, will never allow this to disappear. They're waiting for the moment. So where this fight for the hegemony will reach?
We will have a new regional order soon. You must remember that before 2011, we had two major alliances in the region, two axes. You remember that before 2011, we had something called the axis of between two brackets, moderates, and which means the pro-Western governments. And that was Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Emirates, and Bahrain. You remember that. And then we had another axis, we call it محور الممانعة, which is the resistance axis, whatever it is, because all these terminologies, really. And it included Iran, Turkey, Syria at that time was, and pro-Hamas and pro-Muslim, not Muslim Brotherhood, but pro-Hamas in particular. And that axis on Qatar was seen as part of that axis as well. So 2011, two axes collapsed. The axis of moderates collapsed because Egypt had a revolution and Muslim Brotherhood took over the new presidency. And they withdrew from the axis of moderates. The axis of resistance collapsed because Syria had a revolution and they withdrew from the axis and they became, everyone started fighting against the Syrian regime, including Turkey and Qatar, although Iran supported the Syrian regime. So we had no axes since then. Now I see that the two axes almost are coming back to operation. Because for the first time I see a much more closer ties between Turkey and Iran than any other moment from 2011. Where people right now are talking about restructuring the region in a different way. Although Turkey and Iran disagree on Syria and Iraq sharply, they are basically sponsoring opposite fighting militias against each other. But the sentiment is, while we disagree on Syria and Iraq, we do agree on many other issues, including the Kurdish state that should not be established, including the issue of Palestine, how we should handle it, including the issue of Qatar and the issue of the Saudi war in Yemen. All these kind of issues, in a way, you could agree upon. So there is a new theory emerging in the region. Let us continue to disagree on certain matters and have discussion about it, but let us work upon, act upon what we agree. And this is a new sentiment in the region. Now, if you put Turkey and Iran together, this is a huge war. By far, much more than Saudi Arabia. because Turkey and Iran, they have the biggest armies in the region, and they have the biggest influence in the region as far as their soft power is concerned. Iran in the form of the Shia societies in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, and Turkey in the form of Sunni power as well, which has a lot of support for Sunni movements and groups in the region. So now, in my opinion, to view the American position, why the Americans the first 2 days kept silent, Mr. Trump even welcomed the Saudi move against Qatar, but by the end of that day, Taylor Larson came publicly and he said this is not a good idea. He contradicted his president simply because of the dynamics in the region. Will the Americans feel comfortable if Turkey and Iran sit together and start organizing the region? This region is seen as a monopoly for the Americans, especially the Gulf. I mean, speak about the Arabian Gulf. These are a monopoly of the American foreign power. Now you are forcing two major regional powers to start acting upon something together, which is scary for the Americans. So immediately they interfere to cool down. Because I do argue that the plan was to have a military intervention in Qatar the first 2 days. And the Americans stopped that. Why? Because they have seen the escalation by the Turks and the Iranians, especially the Turks, who in rush made the parliament meet 10 p.m. that night and declared a permission to send the troops to Qatar. And the troops in a few hours were actually started to arrive in Qatar. So it means you are going to have a regional war if you allow the Saudis and Emiratis to send their forces inside Qatar. And this is why the Americans prevented the war by stopping any military escalation or regime change in Qatar.
I mean, the question of seeing Iran and Turkey making agreement, we have seen them in the last few years up and down, being, close to war, and then again meeting in some common points. But I think Iraq will be, the main possibility to see what's happening, because we have the American troops fighting side by side with the Iranian militias against the interest of Turkey. And we are very happy because the towns are liberated of ISIS. But if you go to Fallujah, Ramadi, now we will see what happened in Mosul. What is the reality of that liberation? We have very sectarian and criminal militia supported by Iran, beheading people, disappearing people, destroying mosques. That's creating another, Daesh or anti system or revolution.
Yeah.
In Iraq.
No.
Will manage to stabilize Iraq really if the Americans and the Iranians go back to be together as they did since the beginning of the occupation. But will Turkey accept Iraq and maybe Syria out of his control or the environment?
Thank you very much. Let me actually tell you the following. This is my personal opinion. It is a bit, very direct. I think the Americans at this stage do not really matter that much for us in the region. Simply why? The Americans made huge mistakes during the last few years in Syria and Iraq. And they have supported not a proper transformation to something that could work. For example, in the case of Syria, they have been initially, verbally, during Obama administration, supporting the revolution, saying that Bashar should not continue to exist, al-Assad. But we have not seen any action. In fact, the contrary, we have seen them fighting against providing the rebels with weapons. So there was no reliability in their statements regarding Syria. And you remember Obama's red line on the issue of chemical weapons, how it was not actually dealt with properly. When Trump came, also he did the same basically. At the beginning he started saying, Syria is not important for us. It's not an issue. We are fighting terrorism. As if terrorism has landed from Mars and just exists and you have to eradicate it and everything is going to be peaceful. Ignoring the fact terrorism is a direct product of complications and lack of democracy and corruption in these regimes. And when he attacked Syria because of the chemical weapons, he did that in a show manner, which did not really create any change in the ground. And he never followed that with the proper policies that could really reshift the balance of power in Syria. Besides all of that, they lost the respect of Turkey, simply because they have started supporting militias that have military operations inside Turkey, PKK in Iraq and PYD in Syria, who are also, classified by Turkey as terrorist organizations. So Turkey doesn't feel secure by the American intervention in Syria and Iraq. Okay, go back to Iran. Iran doesn't see the American intervention in Iraq a fantastic idea. Yes, for now it is good to get rid of Mosul, of ISIS in Mosul, but guess what? Trump every day is saying, I'm going to cancel the treaty between Iran and Obama. So you are bringing your troops next to my door, threatening war, and I'm supposed to be happy? Of course I'm not. So what are you doing in the region? You are losing Turkey, you are losing Iran, and you are unleashing the Saudis without a proper agenda on how to arrange the region. So Americans are creating a mess in the Middle East, in my opinion. And because of that, they are losing power, and people are becoming more attracted to the idea of regional agreements. So when Turkey sits with Iran, not because Turkey loves Iran or Iran loves Turkey, at all they don't. Historically, they are rivals. But what can you do in an age where Trump is the President of the United States of America? What can you do when Putin sees the opportunity and jump into it and fill the gap in Syria and start talking about even Iraq? What are you going to do about this kind of reality? It's open territories for anyone to exploit. So you need to have your house under control. And of course, you have two major countries where they have a lot to lose. Syria, which I mean Turkey and Iran, if they do not really start agreeing on how to cool down the region and start getting something done, rather than waiting for the Americans or the Russians to come up with a magic solution. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I think we are touching one of the most important subjects of the week or the month or whatever is the unit of time that we want to take. We use time back. We thought about the year as a unit of time, and then we went to the month. Today we went to the week, and tomorrow we go to the day. Everything about every day changed something very dramatically. You have started at a very interesting point, which is the first trip that President Trump makes. And that trip goes to the Middle East. And that trip goes to Israel, normally, but which is less common, as he decided to stop in Riyadh and spend several days and did what you have said. And you haven't said another piece of a statement that you make it to me is very, very important. The world has two enemies. And those enemies, one is Daesh and the other is Iran. Daesh and Iran are the same. Terrorists, bad people, etc. And to affirm in that matter of fact that the most important enemies of the world, of the civilized world, is Iran, and at the same level Daesh, I think that for the president of a country that a few months before have signed the most important agreement with Iran on nuclear matters, it's really very disturbing. Really, the United States of Obama signed a very important, with other members, with the European Union, Russia and China, a very important agreement. And 5 months later, 4 months later, the President of the United States goes to say that Iran is the most dramatic terrorist along with Daesh. So I think that it's such a mistake that is very transforming not only the region, it's transforming the European Union, it's transforming many things, but that statement it creates a big mess in the world at large. Iran, you may like it or you may dislike it, but it's a state. It's not a movement of liberation, it's a state. He may be also a little bit of a movement of liberation of the Shia, but it's a state. And you are accusing a state of being the source of terror. The day that Trump leaves, the change in the kingdom is very important. The deputy head of the state becomes deputy head of the state. So the successor today is not the successor that was appointed when the king was selected, his second team, but his son. And he's a guy of 30 years of age, and I think you have to put that also, that mini coup within the family, and I don't know the consequences. You know much more than me about the consequences of the family. But the royal family cannot be happy for this fantastic chain of generational succession in Saudi Arabia. The second thing that I think we have to put into the table also is energy. In Saudi Arabia used to be the most important supplier of oil to the United States. You take the figure that we have of today, Saudi Arabia does not export any drop of oil to the United States. So the change, the regional change is absolutely, it cannot be stopped because the United States, still they will be there. They're there because of Israel is there, and because the Suez Canal is very important to be maintained as a free place where people and merchandise come from. But I'm very, very, very concerned about that. And they chose Qatar, which happens to be the country that has the most important military base of the United States in this region. I have been there, I've been in that base. There are about 12,000 people, and all the military actions that have taken place, even the ones that are taking place in Syria today, take off from Qatar, which at the same time is accused of all kinds of bad things by the neighbors. So the message of such a dimension that I don't know if the solution that the idea that you put on the table, which is very interesting, that the change of its hegemony in this region may be Turkey-Qatar. Maybe. Turkey-Iran, maybe. But don't forget that Turkey, at the end of the day, is a member of NATO still. So Turkey can go as far as, but not infinitely far. But it's an interesting idea to play with that because it's a Sunni country, it's not Arab, which is another question. I mean, it's not an Arab country, it's a Muslim country, it's a Sunni country, but not an Arab country. And so I don't know if that could be enough to settle the region. I think we see very far away the understanding between Iran and Saudi Arabia would be the real solution, I think, to many of the problems that we have. And don't forget also, that you know that better than I do, that Saudi Arabia has a prerogative, which is the La Mecca is there, and every year, millions of people from all the world do have to go there, and have to be free movement of people. That cannot be closed. And this year, Qatar has been close to be even to the Mecca. So are many things that it seems to me that they don't have a simple solution at this point in time. We will see probably, we have seen already Russia in the region. We may see one day China in the region, because Saudi Arabia and China are now most friendly exchangers of gas and of oil from Qatar and oil from, gas from Qatar, oil from Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I think that we cannot be optimistic at this point and try that any easy solution will not exist. Now, what is going to dominate? Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, America versus Qatar, all the many things we are couples that you can hear can look at there with tensions, which is the one which is predominant and what is the one who can be resolved first.
Yeah, may I just add on that, because I will have to leave.
We have
Yeah, we have to. I have to leave it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, I just coming from far away, South America, but I was very much involved in the region, including spurred by my friend Javier Solana. So, what is very striking for me in this attitude of Trump, among other things. I mean, of course, we have seen in the election, and I have seen, but in the internet, it's the total absence of commitment to the facts. I'm not even saying to the truth, but to the facts. I mean, to link the ISIS or Daesh, or however you call it, with Iran is something totally absurd. I mean, you can accuse Iran of many things, but certainly you cannot accuse Iran of being accomplice with Daesh. On the other hand, Trump himself has said in the beginning that Daesh was the main threat, and that they would go as far as even not supporting, but accepting Bashar al-Assad in the combat with Daesh. And to some extent even Russia, to that extent. So what do you think made it change so quickly? Because after all, in 3 or 4 months of it's not too much. Well, I don't know, but I mean, what is specifically, apart from the accusations that he himself suffered of having been supported by the Russians, to elect Iran as the sole main enemy and even link it to the Daesh? Because I think this is really both Saudi Arabia and the United States, totally different societies, totally different systems of government, but for some reason, both of them need an enemy. And the best enemy now, which can then be a point of union, is Iran. And because Iran is not so aggressive now, they have to link it to Daesh, which is not true at all. So maybe you would like, I mean, when you comment to Sir Javier's point, mention this puzzling situation also.
Thank you very much. Just to quick comments on Mr. Solana's words about this region. Yes, I do agree. It is too early for us to imagine exactly how this whole dispute will settle. However, I could say that this region, if you want to understand it, you need to zoom out. It means you need to widen the time frame that you are operating upon. And I said that before 2011, we had dynamics in the region that included 2 major blocks, and that was for a long time actually operating. Now it seems to me 2011 to 2017 were an exceptional period of the life of the region. So we may witness coming back to prior 2011 in a way or another. But I would say one of the major disasters that happened to us from the 2011 until today is something called sectarianism. When we did not have proper alliances of power based on interest, we had alliances based on sect. A Sunni axis against the Shia axis. That's scary. And I would say, in my opinion, that we lost during these few years more than we lost when we had polarization based on interest. So if we go back to the axis of the 2 axes based on interest, for us is much better dynamics than the axis of a zero-sum game based on whether you are a Shia or whether you are a Sunnah. And it means if you are a Shia or a Sunnah, I have to eradicate you. That might lead us to genocide, because there is no way to reconcile religious controversies but by genocide, basically. This is unfortunately the situation. So I think we have lost a lot. And to establish an axis, which we call a Sunni, where the Saudi Arabia is leading that, or a Shia where Iran is leading that, is very scary, and I think we should stop it, and psychologically it is destroying our nations for a long time. So this is one element that I would like always to emphasize upon. The second one, that the dynamics in the region itself is always shifting. It's not yet settled. This region is in a state of earthquake and still going through the earthquake. So today I witness, for example, the problem of Iraq, where Daesh is losing territories in Mosul. In the next month or 2, we are going to confront the big question of what is after Daesh in the Sunni territories, as you asked me. And then we are going to have also again another round of conflict of who is going to inherit the territories that Daesh has been controlling. Is it the pro-Shia militias or the pro-Turkish Sunni militias? And again, another Iranian-Turkish debate will emerge. So that we have to wait and see how the result of that will happen.
And the Kurds.
And the Kurds is number 3. It's a big story, the Kurds. The Kurds right now are supported militarily by the Americans. The Pentagon is pouring weapons in the Kurds of Syria. And they are declaring day after day that we are going to have our own independent location, both in Iraq and Syria, by the way. That means what? That means Turkey and Iran are going to join forces anti-independence of the Kurds. So are you going to fight over Sunni territories of Iraq or to join forces against the Kurds? Or you are going to accept also Bashar al-Assad to continue? Will Turkey accept Bashar al-Assad to continue in Syria because Iranians are demanding that, it's very complicated. Also, the Russian element is complicated, by the way. When you say Russia is in Syria, some of us might see Russia in Syria as pro-Iranian presence. But I can assure you that Iran is more worried about Russia now than anything else. Because the Russians have their own agenda right now. It's not the Iranian agenda. So they might settle for a new agreement. So will the Iranians get close to Turkey because they want to get rid of the Russians in Syria? So, as you see, there is a lot of contradicting interest. This is why I say an axis based on interest is much better for us. Because always there is a way of maneuvering, agreeing on something, disagreeing on something. While if you say Sunni Shi'i, it means khalas, black and white, it means we have to fight. You know. So just to move to Mr. Moreno's question about how are we going to see Trump, why is Trump is behaving the way that he's behaving. I think the most important element in Trump's administration at this time, in his foreign policy, is the fact in his domestic politics he's not secure. This gentleman, he wakes up every day with a threat of impeachment or a threat of another crisis emerging in his country. So the State Department is not secure anyway anymore in developing policies based on the American established interest in the region. Neither the Pentagon is capable of doing so, and the White House is doing things in a show. While you are getting close to the Saudis, you get 480 million, you go back and say jobs, jobs, jobs. That's a very important message for the American domestic politics, not for the region. When you are fighting against Iran, you are also saying, okay, we have a visible, clear enemy. Daesh is a good enemy to have, but Daesh is declining now. So after Daesh ends, who are going to be a nice enemy? Iran is a beautiful enemy to have. And Iran is still in the image of some Americans also not a good country. I think he is conducting two consecutive policies in strategies. The first one is show-driven foreign policy. Second is a transactional. You give me, I allow you to do so. You don't give me, I fight with you. And this is his relationship with us in the region. He has a huge investment in Dubai, personally actually, and in Emirates. And he has good return from his visit from Saudi Arabia. He doesn't really have anything in Qatar. Neither personal investment nor promises of investment. So I can't see the Americans at this stage playing foreign policy based on their well-established tradition of maintaining, You said about the base. You know that now there are reports published in many newspapers in America that Mr. Trump was not really aware of the fact that there is a huge military base in Qatar. And when he did what he did, I mean, this is scary. This is the biggest military base in the Middle East, unfortunately.
Apart from that, are you implying that perhaps Saudi Arabia deceived Mr. Trump, or at least took advantage of his narcissism and ignorance about the issue about the region in order to get his green light on Qatar crisis?
I think, yes, I do agree in one sense. I think there was reports in many newspapers in America suggesting what you are saying now. That when they sat together, by the way, the officials were not involved in this discussion. I mean, the State Department were not sitting in the meeting when that happened between the king and the president. And they were talking about the role of Saudi Arabia, and we need to fight funding terrorism. So I said, okay, you have to do whatever you want to do. It's your fight. So they framed the first few days. They framed the issue of Qatar under fighting, funding terrorism. And since the mandate has been given to them, so they can put it under that particular article, you know. But later on, it became something else. Now it evolved into closing down Al-Jazeera. It evolved into Iranian relationship with Qatar and many other elements. So yes, I would agree that what Trump was interested in is what he's going to say when he comes back to his country, rather than what will happen in the region when he leaves. So this is what happened, and he continued the first 2 days supporting them. Unfortunately, the second day he issued 3 tweets saying what fantastic is happening. We are fighting extremism. Saudi Arabia is moving to do its own business. And the State Department had actually to intervene because Telly Larson, he was the CEO of ExxonMobil. And the ExxonMobil had a huge operation in Qatar. He knows the region. He knows that Qatar and Saudis don't like each other for a long time. He knows the complications. It's not as easy as saying, wow, it is a beautiful fight against terrorism. So he had to really interfere and to issue another statement.
And what about Al Jazeera? Do you think that's the main point of Qatar?
If you think about the 13 demand, that if you look at them, the only one which is very clear, shortcut, direct, and you can say yes or no, is closing down Jazeera. The rest is issues about general statements that you can always argue about. In my opinion, closing down Al Jazeera has been a demand of the Saudis and the Emiratis for a long time. And 2014 was one of them, and until today. But the issue is, by forcing Qatar to close down Al Jazeera, it's not only about closing down Al Jazeera, which is in my opinion very important for them, but also making Qatar surrender completely. Because when Qatar closed down Al Jazeera, it means the state has officially announced total surrender, like the Germans surrendering to the alliance in Second World War. Finish. Because Al Jazeera is the last and the most important tool that Qatar has, basically, as a soft power. So it's very, they are pushing Qatar to a surrender. And in my opinion, the 13 points that if you read them, they were written in a humiliating way. All of them, trying to force them to do things which Qatar, definitely will never, any sovereign state will never allow itself to go into that direction.
I wanted to ask about Al Jazeera also, because there has not been a public or a huge support from media associations, freedom of speech. We're talking about closing, the request to close in the Arab world the biggest or the most important media station that changed the landscape of media in the Arab world. But why there is no support or very small support from Western international organizations on freedom of speech?
I think, by the way, if you follow the American major newspapers during the last few days, I was really happy to see that the New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, and many other major newspapers issued their position clearly on this matter of closure of Al Jazeera, and they were condemning it. Publicly, all of them wrote editorials in the name of the newspaper saying that this is unacceptable demand. Now, of course, I understand that this whole confusion about Qatar has been enveloped with the concept of terrorism and fighting terrorism. And some media in the West, especially in Europe, more than the America is much more clear, and Britain, by the way. But I noticed that in non-English speaking countries, the whole conflict was not very clear. So media did not understand exactly what is these people are talking about. Fighting terrorism is a fantastic thing. No one can say, no, we don't want to fight terrorism. And putting Al Jazeera under that kind of cover makes it much more confusing. Although I do believe that anyone looking at the demands themselves, he can figure out exactly and directly what does this mean. And I wish if I'm a journalist in any newspaper or magazine, personally I would be offended when I see that a country is put under siege, under a blockade, just for one major request: close down your network. It's very scary if that happens and becomes acceptable international practice. Tomorrow that becomes a threat against anyone.
BBC had to shut down in the past.
BBC shut down because of the Saudi pressure, by the way. BBC Arabic. 1995, BBC Arabic closed down because the Saudis withdrew the funding of BBC because the BBC broadcast a documentary that the Saudis saw critical. And 1995, immediately we started buying the equipment of the BBC Arabic. You know, you must remember this carefully because history is interesting in this matter. Al-Jazeera was established as a successor of BBC Arabic. The TV studios, I still remember that our early cameras were written on them BBC when we bought them from the BBC. The first group of journalists who established Al Jazeera, 1996, were actually ex-BBC, all of them. 73 people came from London because BBC Arabic closed, and then they started Al Jazeera. So it is as if it is a continuation of a war that started long time at that in 1995.
Please.
Mr. Khanfar, you've transmitted us a sense of urgency on these matters, which makes me feel more and more puzzled by the total lack of commitment by European governments, European institutions, and even European media, as Pedro said, to the situation that the Gulf is going through on these days. You've mentioned maybe some of the reasons, but I would like you to comment on this.
I think the most visible policy was taken in Europe was the German. I mean, I would say that the Germans, from the first day, they took a very strong position of criticizing the blockade against Qatar and saying that a solution for any dispute regionally should be through dialogue rather than through pressure. And I understand why the Germans are saying so, because the Germans are interested in stabilizing also the markets, and gas markets especially. You must remember that Qatar is the second worldwide producer of gas. And the first is Russia. So if you are destabilizing gas supply to Europe, it means you are giving the Russians much better opportunity to be involved. And I would say that countries who import gas from Qatar in Europe, they will feel not very excited about this idea of replacing Qatar by Russia. So you can justify, this is a rational state acting. When a rational state feels that its interest might be destabilized, they act upon it. And I think the Germans did that from the first few days. I hope that Mr. Macron has also get involved in some kind of talks with parties. I hope that could also become a step forward that might create another dimension. I think the confused foreign policy of America is a great opportunity for European countries. We are talking about their neighborhood. We are far from America, but we are next door to Europe. If America can maybe afford to have mistakes in foreign policy, the consequences on Europe is quick and fast and direct. Europe cannot afford to have mistakes. And this is why the Europeans should be much more involved in the Middle East rather than the Americans at this moment in time. A crisis in the Middle East means migration, means more terrorism, means a lot of confusion, and means a lot of direct impact on their daily lives, especially oil and gas, which comes directly from that region. So this is why I think what the Europeans are doing now is not sufficient in responding to the crisis in the Gulf.
Thank you very much. I'd like you to speculate a little bit about what's next. I mean, what happens when the deadline in a couple of days arrives? You mentioned before that the first attempt, there was a possibility of a military intervention, that was stopped probably by the United States, but is that likely now? And if so, is there any possibility, I mean, apart of the mess that we all can see, is there any possibility of a real success? Because Saudi Arabia is involved in the coalition in Yemen, and they've been there for months, and nothing happens but a lot of suffering, a lot of destroyed cities, people. I mean, it's a disaster. So would the Saudis really be willing to get involved in another war, in another military intervention? I mean, they may have a lot of weapons, they may have a lot of money, but they don't have the real capacity to really get involved in another war. That's my impression, but I'd like to know what you think. And if there is no military intervention, then how can the Saudis force something towards Qatar? They can't just say nothing happens. I mean, we gave you a deadline and you did nothing, and I think Qatar should do nothing. I mean, as a sovereign state. But what would the others do then? Thank you.
I think, if I want to speculate, I will give you the following, but all of that is speculation.
Yeah.
I don't see a military intervention something that might happen at this stage, because this means a regional war.
Right.
And no one would like to see that at this moment in time. B, the Americans are now more involved, and the Americans are going to speak to, they are speaking to all parties. Everyone is recognizing that the demands impossible to implement in the way that they have been presented. So maybe a way out of this would be establishing a mechanism of saying, because we have this beautiful thing in politics, when you fail to do something, you establish a process for it. So like the Palestinian negotiations, we have a process for 30 years now, taking us nowhere, but it's a process, nice process, and people meet and shake hands. So maybe we can see in the next few days a process established by saying that there is a committee or there is a group of people representing both parties going to sit and negotiate over the next few months or whatever it is, just to ease the tension. Because also, one of them, two mistakes happened from the countries that put Qatar on the blockade. First, 13 demands that are not practically possible to implement. Second, deadlines. When you put a deadline, people expect you to do something after the deadline. So the deadline will finish tomorrow. What are you going to do? You need an announcement to make. My opinion, this announcement would be forming a mechanism or a process sponsored by maybe the United States and some other parties, where we are going to meet in the next, in Korea we have this 5+1 or 6 countries, or many other countries. You establish a mechanism. I think that this will take a long time, to resolve this crisis. It's about balance of power in the region. It's about everyone's expectation, and the Saudis and the Emirates put high expectations, more than necessary. And then the Iranians and Turks have also high expectations at this stage. So basically, it will take some time before we reach a proper agreement and an end of a crisis. It will take some time, and the result of this sometime is going to be rebuilding alliances in the region. This is speculation again. And I see this happening. I see people feeling that the region cannot be led by one particular group of governments. The other people who feel harmed by it, they are going to react and to do something opposite to them.
Palestine became a symbol for the Arab community, and all the situation now might change something. Perhaps you could tell us about this issue and the perspective.
Palestine basically at the core of all the events in the Arab world. Although it's not visible, sometimes people say, "Oh, but the world is going through a lot of complications in the Arab world. No one cares about Palestine." It's not true. Palestine always continued to be sometimes under the table, operating psychologically and sometimes politically against all the above-mentioned issues. Right now, we have a major dispute going to happen in the next few, maybe months, about the issue of Palestine. First, who is going to own the Palestinian issue? Before, Iran presented itself as a supporter of resistance. After 2011, Hamas withdrew from Syria, and they had bad relationship with Iran. And they went to Qatar, and they went to Saudi Arabia, by the way. And they felt that we would like to be supported by a Sunni axis. Right now, this Sunni axis is fighting each other. And Iran, again, is still a power in the region, and still very active, and still very happy to receive the Palestinians. So where Palestine is going to end? Is it going to continue to be with the Sunni axis? There's no Sunni axis. Not only that, the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, he complicates matters more. A war. Now we have a lot of expectations in the region that a war against Hezbollah is imminent in the region, in Lebanon. If that happens, it means what the Iranians are going to do about it, and what Hamas is going to do about it as well. So this issue of Palestine is extremely liquid now, fluid. You can't pinpoint. Everyone is doing his own job to own piece of it. What will be the result of it? I really don't know, because as I said, it's connected to all powers. If Hamas succeed in finding a new frame of support, and in this case it should be Iranian Turkish, plus Qatar, of course, where they are located at this stage, they might survive it. And the fact that they are part of a Sunni axis is over. There's no Sunni axis right now in this region, because the Saudis, who are the leaders of the Sunni axis, are saying that you are terrorists. So this is a very interesting development as a consequences of this Qatar debate as well.
I mean, I want to share with you an idea that I have about Saudi Arabia. They don't have a clear strategy. Clear, they've been for the last years, since they feel that they get rid of Egypt as a possible rival in the area, not as you say in the axis, but in terms of power or influence. They tried this Sunni alliance, 34 states. Big thing, Turkey was there. Erdogan went the day after to shake hands. They create the Jihad Islamiyya in Syria when they get angry with the states because they were supporting. Big thing, nothing happened. The only real implication they have done is in Yemen, and it has been a huge disaster. So they are like teenagers getting angry and going to the floor, but nothing happening. So
Okay, yeah.
could be this again one of these big shows. Exactly, you say. 2 days ago, Trump put a tweet, said, spoke yesterday with the King of Saudi Arabia about peace in the Middle East. Interesting things are happening.
Yes.
So maybe they say, okay, yeah, it's enough. You calm down, and as you say, we create another curtain or whatever, and we move until next Saudi Arabia big show.
Yeah, but he might be referring to the relationship between Saudis and Israelis, because what he's saying is peace. Now, as Khafer Solana before said, there's a huge development in Saudi politics, domestic politics, which is a new crown prince, who is the Minister of Defense, Mohammed bin Salman, and he is seen as very courageous, and he's the one behind the war in Yemen, and he's young, of course, 32 years old, and is a new dynamics emerging, different from the traditional dynamics of foreign policy in Saudi Arabia. Saudi's foreign policy used to be conservative, always. Slow, conservative, well calculated, they don't act emotionally, they take long time. What we have seen during the last few, maybe couple of years, is much more, it's a departure from the tradition of Saudi Arabia. So you have, the war in Yemen happened in a very quick way, without proper preparation, as you said. And when the war in Yemen happened, it was expected to continue for 3 weeks. Now, how many months? Not more months. We have 2 years now?
2 years.
Yeah, more than 2 years. A war is happening in Yemen. And it has not really led to a serious conclusion, besides a lot of confusion inside Yemen itself. So this is a new dynamics happening. The Saudis thought that they could lead the region. In the region, again, as you said, think about all the region. Syria in a state of war. Iraq in a state of war, civil war. Libya in a state of civil war. Yemen in a state of war. Egypt in a state of transformation and economic decline and a lot of political problems. Isn't it? What else left? So when you come and say, I would like to lead the region, oh yeah, okay, because you are the only country at this stage that keeps at least, itself together. The rest of the Gulf states are small. So if Saudi Arabia leads them, they will be led, basically. But of course, you should not ignore, as a Saudi, the fact that you are sharing the region with another 2 powers, Turkey and Iran. And we have been saying this for a long time. If 3 countries do not sit on one table to find a solution for the region, in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, wherever it is, this region will continue to have war. These 3 countries have to sit down and to talk to each other. One of them leading the region means the other 2 will fight him. And unfortunately, this is what's happening right now. So I hope that this will be a lesson to all the 3 countries that we need to sit together and to find a solution and a new architecture security architecture, regional architecture that could stabilize the region. Okay, I think we have covered like almost.
A great close.
Thank you very much. Any other questions,
Last question.
please? Yes.
Going back to Al Jazeera, and given that Qatar is not an actual democracy, what's the national interest of Qatar in promoting democracy in its neighborhood through the Al Jazeera?
Thank you very much. Of course, Qatar is not a democracy itself. Qatar is a monarchy. You know, they have an emir and they have a succession and so on. Qatar has taken this position actually from the departure point from 2011 by saying that this region cannot continue having the current structures that it has. It has to have a reform. And the reform, if it is coming peacefully, it is most welcome. Otherwise, it will become violent. That was the official stance of Qatar. They were the first to recognize the Egyptian revolution. They were the first to support the Libyan revolution. They were the first to stand for the Syrian revolution. That was actually their political stance. Al Jazeera was, of course, on the forefront of covering the news of the Arab Spring, and it was seen as the friendly network for the young people in the streets of Cairo and Tunisia and so on. And both positions, in my opinion, Qatar is now paying the price for it at this stage. What Qatar hopes to achieve, I think the Qataris were thinking that the Arab Spring eventually will lead to a stability in the region and we will be secure as states. Otherwise, if we don't go, and this is what's happening right now, and I would just give me 2 minutes to explain to you. We have a counter-revolution in Egypt. We have a new regime led by General Sisi. But can I say that this regime has succeeded in creating prosperity and security in the country? I would say no. Egypt is going through huge transformation and decline of a lot of economic resources and a lot of security situation. We have Syria. The regime has fought against the revolution. They didn't accept reform, although reform in Syria was at the beginning minimal. The demands of the demonstrators were very small. But now we have like hundreds of thousands of dead people, 7 million people outside displaced in their country, and the country is gone. The same happened in Yemen, the same happened in Libya. So what was much better? To accept the result of the Arab Spring and to try to, okay, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt were not the most fantastic politicians under the sun. You get rid of them, you go into another complication, the same in Libya. So the idea of Qatar was, let us give these people a chance. Let us engage with them. Let us educate them. Let us fix the presentation of their thoughts and ideas. But getting rid of them, putting them in jail, is creating a much more chaotic situation. While these countries are now asking for the closure of Al Jazeera, they are building instead what? Not TV stations to educate and enlighten people, or universities. They are building jails. We have tens of thousands of activists in Egypt in jail, and the same across the Arab world. We only, really, I'm speaking about it, and we can also go back to sources. The biggest industry right now, not building universities, building jails. How could you deal with the future of the generation by putting people in jail? If you tweet, you go to jail. If you put a post on your Facebook, you go to jail. If you express opinion to your friend and the authority, they put you in jail. What kind of future are we building? What was much better, to accept the Arab Spring and to deal with the consequences of it, or to block it and then put everyone in jail and say, okay, now military is controlling the Arab world? We are in the front of a chaos that might lead to a much bigger revolution and much more bloody consequences than the one that the Arab Spring 2011 had, because that was a peaceful one. Now people could see that governments are not listening to peace. And that's very scary. I don't like that kind of scenario, but unfortunately I see it every day happening. People under heavy pressure, there is a lot of lack of resources as far as jobs are concerned, economy is not good, and I don't see what kind of solution the Arab world is going to have if we do not embrace democracy and freedom of expression. I don't see the consequences to be peaceful, and I'm sure we have a lot of more destructive and chaos. I hope not. It's a very grim word to end with, but I hope, that eventually we will learn the lesson and do something much more good.
Wadah, let me please.
Sorry, I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on that, about how the population feels, especially in Saudi Arabia, because with all these changes, the generational change and the new orientations in foreign policy and so on, any attempt to say hello from the Arab Spring was silenced with a lot of money. But there are more and more demands by the Saudi population by the citizens. Do you think they would follow the government's agenda to go for a more aggressive, not war, but more aggressive foreign policy? Are they up to that?
You see what is helpful in the Saudi situation, I mean the Saudi government. The Saudis can easily say, the government, to the public, okay, you're not happy with me, fine. You don't like my changes, or you don't like constraints on freedom of expression, what can you do? You want Saudi Arabia to become another Syria, or you want it another Yemen, or another Iraq? People are terrified, I'm telling you the truth. Most of the Arab countries who are now silent, they're not silent because they are accepting the reality, but because the other models presented to them are more bloody. So I would accept, dictatorship in some circumstances, because I don't want my country to become another civil war like Syria. Syria has been used widely by our regimes as an example of disaster. Or the second question the Saudis will ask their population, you don't like me, fine, but if tomorrow I'm not there, who's going to protect this state from Iran, a grand enemy next door to you? Who's going to take care of Mecca and Medina if I'm not? So the biggest investment our countries has is in fear, scaring people from alternatives, not giving them a magnificent promise of peace, but saying, no, if you don't want me, you will suffer. And that's unfortunately a very grim reality, because I would like you to tell me, if I accept you, how beautiful my life is going to be, how free I am going to be, how prosperous I will be. The opposite is happening. Until if you don't accept me, you will have all the above mentioned catastrophes.
I'd like to speculate on that. How do you see speculation, answer if you wish. Trump doesn't finish his term and Saudi Arabia collapses.
First of all, if Trump doesn't finish his term, I think we are going to see a new dynamics emerging, which is going back to the traditional foreign policy that Obama established in the region, which is not taking side, but trying to disengage. He did that with Iran, and in my opinion, he was very successful by signing a deal, and the deal was a great achievement, regardless if that harms the Arabs or does not harm the Arabs, because sentimentally, a lot of us were not with it. But definitely, as a rational state, he did a good job by saying, this is a conflict, I'm dealing with it peacefully, I don't have to go for war. This is a fantastic thing. So maybe the state in America will go back to the original line of thinking about the Middle East, or about the world, not only the Middle East, and that will be, another good news for the American foreign policy in the region. On the issue of Saudi Arabia, whether the regime now will collapse during the next, I don't see that, really. Why? As I said, the Saudi Arabia has established its legitimacy as the custodian of the two mosques, which everyone in the Muslim world love to protect. And second, also, so far the Saudis have been able to managing the contradictions within the society, which is the tribal combinations. Now, the biggest challenge for the Saudis right now is to smooth the transition, because the fact that the new prince has become a crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, the son of the king, against his cousin Mohammed bin Naif, who has been dismissed as Minister of Interior, and there are reports now that he's under house arrest. If the family now, I'm sure that the family has a lot of discussion about this, the royal family, it means, how they will manage this is very necessary. Everyone is observing how the Saudis are going to calm down the princes who are not happy with this transformation. So that is a challenge. My opinion that the Saudis will do that, because you must understand one thing in Saudi Arabia, the king has absolute powers. And the king, when he says something, this is a tradition at least for now, the king can issue any law and can make any decree, and that becomes final. And he did this about his son, and he changed the whole structure, and so far that is fine. I don't see how that will play against it. It will increase the tension maybe, it will create a new dynamics within the family, but it will take a long time until it is perceived. I don't see it happening over the next few months.
Is this lack of hope you were talking about one of the sources of movements like Daesh, or it is a completely different phenomenon?
Okay, let me tell you something. In 2011, if you remember, we had something called the Arab Spring, and everyone was excited about it. And I remember in 2011, after the revolution of Egypt, asking my newsroom in Al-Jazeera to make the following question in the news: where is Al-Qaeda? I remember 2011, Al-Qaeda disappeared. It was, shrank. The hope of change through reform in the Arab world shrank the space where Al-Qaeda was operating. Because Al-Qaeda recruits are those who are angry with reality and those who have lost hope of peaceful transformation. If you have hope of peaceful transformation, I don't see why should you join Al-Qaeda to kill yourself. That's very simple. So I think Al-Qaeda was declining in 2011. 2013 we had a coup in Egypt. And a lot of hope of reform in the Arab world was blocked. Instead, we had a genocide, we had a lot of killing in the streets of Cairo, and that led to a counter feeling that the hope of peaceful transformation is dead. 2013, Daesh emerged. Another more brutal version of Al-Qaeda. Right now, we are moving into the same track, by the way. We are destroying Daesh as a terrorist organization, but at the same time, we are not replacing that model of Daesh with a peaceful, democratic, free environment where a young person will see a hope in. So if you continue to block the hope, of course, another rejectionist organization might come in order to express this kind of pressure, and that is not going to be peaceful. I've learned in the Middle East that whenever there is debate about freedom, there is beautiful environment. Whenever lack of hope of freedom, there is dark environment. And that rule, I don't think it's Arab rule, it's everywhere in the world. It will continue to exist. And this is why I'm saying the current wave of dictatorship in the Arab world, even more brutal than the wave that Hosni Mubarak and Zayn al-Abidin bin Ali and the other guys before 2011 established. It's more brutal. People now are missing Hosni Mubarak, missing Zayn al-Abidin bin Ali, missing Gaddafi. Could you believe that we're missing Gaddafi? Could you believe Libyans could say Gaddafi was nice? Why? Because he was replaced by much more brutal people. So to what extent we have reached? Do you think that a mind that prefers Gaddafi will produce a fantastic and balanced thoughts about the future? Definitely is not. So this is what, yes, I am saying that the current reality is a recipe for much more violent, extremist and terrorist environment. Okay, Your Excellencies, thank you very much. It was great talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay.